Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you know, today we're going to have the presentation of Life After College. And I am sorry you cannot see me. I don't know why my webcam is not working, but you can see Iliana, and Iliana's right there. Hi. And
Hello.
she's going to be presenting. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to wait and hold tight for a couple of minutes before folks start pouring in, and hopefully we get um, some good attendance. We usually have between 20 and sometimes 50 people that attendees, and um, we are excited today because we know that some of you have been asking questions around this, and because some of you are getting ready to either graduate next year, are graduating, have a few classes left, and then also, of course, there's been some worried about, what do we do if DACA is taken away? How do we work? How do we move forward? How do we go to school? So one of the things that Iliana is going to do is she's going to talk to you about this term called the Undocumented hustle. And so Iliana is a quote unquote elder dreamer. She is somebody that has been around for quite some time and was, like some of us, part of the before DACA movement and trying to figure out life. And so we got a few tips and things that we can share about how life can happen and things can happen, and you could do things that you want to do even without DACA. DACA has helped immensely, of course, and we are grateful to have that piece of paper or card. Um, but definitely, we want to talk to you about, what it is to a little bit about it, and then give you different tools and different ideas, and also just kind of say, it's not, it's scary, but it's not going to be that scary. So we will talk, or not me, Liana is going to talk to you about all that. And then after she shares her presentation, like we always do, we'll open it up for questions. So you'll have the opportunity to raise your hand. And once you raise your little hand, we'll click on it, and then we'll get to hear you ask your question. You'll also have opportunity to ask your question written, and so we will read those out loud as they start coming in. But we love to hear your voice, so if you can raise your hand and ask directly the questions, that would be awesome and best. And then last thing is we will be recording this presentation and sending it out to all the other scholars that weren't able to participate and be part of the presentation. But also for everyone, that maybe wants to rewatch it or miss something because they had to, run out to get a cup of water or whatever. You can watch it again. So we'll wait one more minute, I would say. What do you think, Liana? So we
Yeah,
have
we'll let a few more folks trickle in.
yes. And then we'll start the presentation, and we'll start the presentation with two poll questions and then dive right in. And uh, I am just so, so proud to have the opportunity to have Iliana present to all of you. I asked her and she said yes, like in a heartbeat, she would do this, and I was so thankful for that. She has been a badass, and I have been stalking and following her for a couple of
Oh,
years now since she wrote her life after college for Undocumented Youth. Was that 2011?
that came out in January of 2012. So,
2012. Yeah. So
yeah,
you were working though in 2011.
yeah, I was working on this 2010, 2011.
Yeah. And right now she'll tell you a little bit more, but a lot of the work has been done through Educators for Fair Consideration, which is an amazing organization in the Bay Area. Kathy Jin, who is one of the co directors, or um, uh, she started this organization. She's actually on the board of advisors of TheDream.Us, and so we love working together. And Iliana has been doing really amazing work, and E4FC has given the platform for her to be able to put out her work. So we're really excited about that. So let's start with our poll questions, and we just want to really quickly know who the audience is so far that we have on with us. And so we want to know what you are. So what we mean by that is, are you a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or a graduate that you've just graduated from school? So really quickly, if you can, take the quick poll so that we know who is who. So far, we have 63% of the people have voted, and it looks like we have a lot of freshmen folks on. So that's actually really good, because that means. So share results. 40% are freshmen, 30% are sophomores. We have 27% juniors, seniors, and we have a few graduates. So that's awesome. Okay. So the other question that we wanted to ask you all is if you have a job. So do you have a job? Yes, no, or I work for myself. So working for yourself means maybe like you sell products, or you have a business. So 88% have voted so far. And most of our scholars, about a little over 70% of our scholars work. So we'll probably see that percentage. So far, 94%. There's somebody that hasn't voted. Come on. Vote. Okay, so I'm about to close the poll. Okay. So 60% say yes, they're working. 20%, 40%, sorry, are not working. Okay. So that's also good to know. And those were the poll questions that we had. So without further ado, this is Iliana Perez. Soon, in maybe, I don't know how long the process takes, but I believe soon she's going to be Dr. Iliana G. Perez. And I'm really excited about that, because we need more Latinos to have PhDs, and specifically more Latinas to have PhDs. And also, of course, undocumented people who are showing folks in the face of fear and all this crazy racism and xenophobia that they cannot mess with us. So I am so proud of Iliana, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Gabby, for the invitation to speak with all the scholars. And just like you mentioned, stalking me, I've been stalking you for many years, and so proud and so grateful for all the work that you've been doing. So thank you, Gabby. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I will mention that the PowerPoint presentation is available in the handout section of this webinar. So you can feel free to download it and take a look at it as I'm moving along in the presentation. You will notice that there are many more slides than the ones I'm going to cover. I thought that I would just include them in case anybody would like to learn more about any one of the sections that I'll be talking about. So feel free to look through it as I'm talking, and if there's anything else in any of the other slides that you would like to comment on, or if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. So this is the agenda. I'm actually going to hide this. Okay. So this is the agenda for today's presentation. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about my testimonial, talking about who I am, some of my background and my work. And then I'll go into the Undocu Hustle in grad school, and I'll get a chance to share with all of you how excited I am about the Undocu Hustle. talk a little bit about what it's like to navigate the professional world, talk about some alternative ways to earn a living, and by alternative I mean opportunities to work without DACA. So anybody who does not have a work authorization, I'll talk about some of the ways that do exist. And then lastly, I'll mention some of E4FC's entrepreneurship initiatives that I've been working on. So to begin, I always share my immigration story because I think it's so important for any audience to get to know, how all of us, came to this country, how we became undocumented, because many of us, there are different stories. We're a very heterogeneous group among the undocumented, so really encourage you all as well to learn to tell your story and be confident about sharing your story, because it's really important for everyone out there to understand this. Also, it's important to understand that this is a very human experience, that it's not just about numbers. I mean, I love numbers. You'll hear me talk about how much I love data, but at the end of the day, the immigration debate is not just about passing policy and the economics behind immigrants. It's really about this. So this is my family when we were back in Mexico. So I was born in the state of Hidalgo in Mexico, and my family immigrated here, all my parents, my brother and I, in 1995 when I was 8 years old. So I think this picture was taken like in 92, so a few years after this. And we settled in the Central Valley in California in a tiny little rural town called Turlock. So it's right smack in the middle of California, a very agricultural town. My family has a lot of history there. My great-grandfather was a bracero, and he came in the 40s and brought over all his children. So one of his children is my grandmother. So we've actually have been there for many years. So many of my family members are actually U.S. citizens, and we're the ones that came in at the end, and we're the only ones that are undocumented in our family. So pretty much growing up, I knew that I was undocumented from the very beginning. My parents really wanted us to understand what that was like, mostly because we knew that there was a possibility of rapes, there was a possibility of La Migra coming into the fields where my dad worked. So it was something that we all needed to understand how serious of an issue that was. But more than that, I think what they really instilled was the importance of getting an education. So they didn't know exactly all the issues related to being undocumented and wanting to pursue higher education, but all they really told us was just do very well in school, and then we'll figure it out once we get there. So I did very well in school. I moved on to junior high and high school, being in a lot of like AP classes. I've always had a strong math background, so I've always loved math since I could remember. I think that one of the things that really stands out for me is that when I came to this country as an English language learner, I didn't know the language, but I knew the math. So in Mexico, I like to think that it's a couple of years more advanced in terms of their mathematics skills that they teach to the students. So when I came here, it really became my strength to offset the fact that I didn't speak the language when I first came here. So as I was getting to think about college and high school, a lot of my classmates were, we were all on a completely different track, on a college track, where we knew that we needed to apply. It was a really exciting moment. So I sort of just went with the flow. I applied to many universities and waited to hear back from them. So I got accepted to pretty much all the universities I applied to. Like I mentioned, I did have the good grades, I had the AP classes, the extracurricular activities, but when it came down to figure out how I was going to pay for it, that was really the problem, being undocumented. So just to put it in context, this was I graduated from high school in 2005, so around 2004 I was doing the applications and trying to think about how I would pay for this. So there was no AB 130, no AB 131 in California. There was no DACA, obviously. So we did have AB 540, which allowed me to pay in-state tuition. So that was the only thing that I did have. So then I started making a lot of phone calls, and at the time, a lot of the universities just didn't know how to help me. They just knew that being undocumented, I wasn't eligible for state or federal funds. So they would pretty much just say, well, this is the law, and unfortunately, you're undocumented, so you don't qualify for this aid. So at the last minute, I ended up getting an invitation from the SMCCAM Family Honors College at Fresno State in California, inviting me to apply to their program. And the honors program pays full tuition, room and board, parking, books, gave me a free laptop, so it's completely a full package. So I called them and told them about my status, and they said that they didn't ask. Like, it wasn't part of the application at all. It's a merit-based scholarship, so if I met all the qualifications for that scholarship, then I would be able to get it. So that's how I ended up going there for my undergrad. So I was at Fresno State from 2005 to 2009. I ended up majoring in math. Again, huge math geek, and just really enjoy doing math in general. So I ended up majoring in math and then getting a minor in economics because I knew that I wanted to pursue graduate school in economics. So many of the courses that I took really got me thinking and wanting to understand this immigration problem within a larger context. So I became just sort of really intrigued by just the question of why did we come here in the first place? I really wanted to understand. I mean, we weren't the only ones. Obviously, there are millions of undocumented people, so I wanted to understand it through an economics lens and try to understand how trade agreements, how politics play a role in this issue that I was caught in. So that led me to prepare, do a lot of research, which I'll talk about throughout the presentation. I did a lot of research with several departments, and I prepared for the GRE. So I knew everything that it took to get to graduate school, but I mean, being undocumented, I knew it was going to be difficult, again, primarily to get to get it paid for. So I graduated in 2009. So in 2008, I was applying to different programs. And at the time, when I called universities about the PhD programs, they just were not accepting undocumented students. So the PhD program is typically paid through research assistantships, teaching assistantships, which require work authorization, which I didn't have. So I thought I'll hold off on the PhD for a while, so I applied to a few master's programs in the US, in Canada, and in Mexico. And by this time I thought, I mean, with my degree, if I need to leave the country, I'll leave the country. It's something that really helped me to sort of, visualize my world beyond just the US. That being undocumented, I knew that, I mean, my parents, made a decision to leave, and I mean, of course, being in the US is a great opportunity. It has continued to be a great opportunity for myself and for my family, but I wanted to know that there was another world outside of the US, that if it didn't work out here, then I needed to look for the opportunities elsewhere. So I was fine with that. I applied to different universities, and I got into the universities I applied to, well, in all 3 countries. But I got into the New School for Social Research, which was my dream school. It's in New York City, super left-leaning social sciences program, specifically on the economic side. So when you walk into the door, the first picture you see is of Karl Marx, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is totally where I want to be. So really excited to be there. And of course, the issue was finances. I spoke with the admissions and financial aid directors and told them about my status, and they were willing to help me out with most of the funding, but I was still off by about, I think it was like around $5,000 to $10,000. So I ended up getting a private loan with a co-signer who is a US citizen, and which ultimately eventually got me in trouble because I originally was going to use my ITIN number, but it didn't work, so I had to use a different social security number. Anyway, so I went to the new school. I had never gone on a plane. I was terrified, but I just thought, I gotta give it a try. So I flew with my Mexican passport. That's how I traveled before DACA. So I flew to New York, started the program. I was there for 1 full semester. And then at the end of the semester, when I came back home, I got a letter in the mail saying that I needed to provide proof of my identity, of my social security number, which obviously I didn't have. So I ended up not being able to return to the program. I came back home and just was helping my dad out. So by this time, he had already started a landscaping business. So I mowed lawns when I came back. really great time to reflect on life, to evaluate life. At least that's what I think about as I reflect on all of this, that it was just a time to think about what I would do next. So this was in 2010 when I came back. So it was around that time where I made the decision to move to the Bay Area, which was about an hour and a half away from the Central Valley. So I moved there, and I stumbled across this opportunity to work as an independent contractor with an I-10. So I did lots of odd-end jobs in marketing, in social media. I started a social media consulting business at one point, and event coordinating, bartending, just lots of different things that that I was doing at this time. And one of my jobs was also working with E4FC. So the idea really came from a conversation between Kathy Jin, the executive director, and I, where I shared, sorry, my boyfriend just walked in. He's on the other side distracting me. Anyway, so this, we had this conversation. I shared with her all that, this is my trajectory up to the time when I had to come back from the new school. And she had this idea of, writing a guide. Why don't we write a guide? I mean, you're not the only one that's graduating that's undocumented. So what are folks doing when they graduate? So I ended up interviewing 13 undocumented individuals who were going to law school, starting businesses, teaching, doing all these great things. So that their stories, as well as my own story, ended up in this Life After College Guide for Undocumented Students, which came out in January of 2012. But a very important piece of that guide was this earning a living section, which talked about how undocumented individuals could earn a living without work authorization through independent contracting, and they could also start businesses. So that really became the first opportunity to talk about these issues and to share this information with the community at large. So there was a lot of attention. There was from the media, and I got the opportunity to present to lots of different audiences about these opportunities. And then in January of 2012, at the same time it came out, I also started a graduate program. So in one of my odd-end jobs as an event coordinator, I met Professor Iliana Perez, who works at Claremont Graduate University, and he's known for doing work on access to higher education for undocumented students. So we had a brief conversation that led to me sharing that I still was interested in graduate school, but I just was having a very difficult time going. So he shared that the university actually created a fellowship specifically to support undocumented students. So CGU created what's called the 21st Century Civil Rights Fellowship that used to fund, because it no longer exists, that funded one undocumented student to pursue doctoral studies. So 4 of us were able to attend CGU through that fellowship. Unfortunately, it no longer exists, but we are in the middle of advocating for it to be reinstated and to open that opportunity for more undocumented students to get to the PhD level. So I started my PhD program in January of 2012. And I've been there ever since. So it's been about 5.5 years that I've been in the program. Along the way, I got a master's in economics, and now I'm starting to work on my dissertation that will focus on immigrant entrepreneurs, and I'm set to graduate hopefully next May. So that's sort of a very general overview of the trajectory and how I've been involved with exploring these entrepreneurship opportunities, and also really focusing on increasing access to graduate school for undocumented students. Let's see. So I'm going to move on to what I've termed the undocu-hustle in graduate school. And you'll notice that the undocu-hustle, I'll keep referring back to it just because I feel that this undocumented experience has completely been a hustle experience from the very beginning, since I was trying to get into college and looking for work opportunities, going to graduate school. Nothing has ever been there. I've sort of had to create many of my own opportunities. I've had to work with other individuals to create new opportunities for many other undocumented students that didn't exist before. So I'll talk a little bit about more what the term means. But in general, when I talk about graduate school, some of the first things I talk about are, when you're trying to think about and whether or not you want to go to graduate school, here are some of the things you want to think about. Do you want to go into a master's, a PhD program, professional school? And with this, the decision is really going to be made on why is it that you want to pursue graduate school or professional school. Is it for work purposes? Is it, general academic curiosity for certain topics? Really think about what that looks like, because that's all going to depend on that's all going to lead into questions about funding and also about the time commitment for each one of these. So master's programs are typically a lot shorter. It could range from 1 to 2 years, whereas a PhD program is a very long-term commitment. So you're talking about 5 or 6 years. And when that really makes a difference, it's with funding. So most of the time, master's programs, whether you're undocumented or not, are a little bit more difficult to find funding for, whereas PhD programs in general should be completely funded, whether it's a combination of institutional funds, which I'll talk about a little bit later, or a combination of the TA-ships or the RA-ships. So because it's a long-term commitment, the institution is more likely to give you that funding to be there for a long period of time. With professional school, that's typically, you do have to pay for professional school, but again, there are institutional fellowships that can help you pay for that. But just some consideration in terms of time commitments and then the finances related to each one of those. In terms of private versus public, so being undocumented, private universities typically have those discretionary funds. In my case, Claremont Graduate University, as well as the honors program. Even though the honors program was within a state university, the honors program was privately funded. So anytime that you come across privately, anything that's privately funded, it is very likely that an undocumented person can be eligible for that because they have those discretionary funds. So that's a really important consideration when you're starting to look at universities, to ask those questions, ask the questions about their endowments, how much money they have, because the higher the endowments the endowment that each university has, the higher the likelihood to fund an undocumented student. It's not to say that public universities won't do it. In California, we're fortunate that many of the UCs are now supporting undocumented students, many of the Cal States, so it is possible, but definitely at the professional PhD level, definitely be on the lookout for the private universities that just have a lot more money to give out. Another consideration is supportive versus non-supportive financial support. Sorry, that should be two different points, supportive versus non-supportive institutions. And by what I mean by that is that you may come across, especially at the graduate and professional school level, that the institution itself may not know anything about undocumented students. You may be the first that's even applying, so you're going to have to deal with, jumping through several hurdles just to try to get the institution to understand what it's like, what an undocumented student looks like. Whereas many of the supportive institutions, now in this case CGU, USC, like many of the Ivy Leagues, are very familiar with undocumented students, so you may not necessarily have to jump through all those hurdles, but it really depends. I mean, you may be able to get a lot more funding from an institution that just learned about, all the issues related to undocumented students and is willing to fund them, but they may not necessarily know, that their application should not, should actually have a separate box for undocumented so that you don't get, so that you're not identified as an international student, things like that. That if you don't have work authorization through DACA, then you're going to have to be a little bit more creative with how the funding gets to you. So some of the differences to consider. The other separate point should be financial support available. That's really the number one, and that's where you really want to spend your time doing your research. As you start thinking about, after you make a decision, whether it's master's, PhD, or professional level, then you want to dive into all of these separate sections and be very organized about, the different types of universities and how much money they each have to offer. And I think at this point, because there is so much attention regarding immigration, regarding undocumented students, many more universities are really opening their doors and much more willing to support undocumented students. So definitely encourage all of you to knock on those doors and to make those phone calls and be the first to be at any one of these institutions. The last thing to consider is also allies. So as I mentioned before, having met Will was just completely a blessing. He's been incredibly supportive throughout the PhD journey, both with the financial support through the fellowship, but also through research opportunities to present at conferences, opportunities to publish with him. So really, really important to identify allies wherever it is you're going who are going to help you throughout your trajectory, regardless of whether it's master's, PhD, or professional school. So I'm going to briefly touch upon the types of financial assistance available for graduate school. This is by far the #1 question I get. So what does exist for undocumented students? And like I mentioned before, the PowerPoint presentation that you have goes into much more detail about each one of these. So if you're interested in learning more about them, the information is there. But in general, this is intended to be sort of, you know, a kind of like a toolbox for all of you to understand that the support is actually there, and that oftentimes when you're trying to think about paying for graduate or professional school, you may actually have to create a package. So it may not, I mean, you may be able to get the full ride fellowship, but if not, these are some of the different ways where you can tap into lots of different sources of funds. So the first one I'm going to go over quickly is state aid. So every state, depending on the type of legislation that they have, could allow undocumented students to get access to the state aid. So in California, and I'm sorry, I'm based out of California, so that's why a lot of my talking points are definitely related to California, but I know that a lot more is also happening at several states, so you may have to do a little bit more research. But in state aid, in California, we do have AB 130 and AB 131, which is primarily intended to be for undergraduate students, but the state aid is available to graduate students only at the CSUs. So that's the one caveat about AB 130 and 131, but one of the positive things about having the state aid at the CSU level is that many undocumented students will choose to go to a CSU maybe to get a master's, which will get funded, and then move on to like a PhD or professional school once you get that experience in there and it is paid for. There are also institutional fellowships, so these are at the university level. So each university has these funds set aside specifically to fund any type of cause or any type of, you know, specific student. So so some institutional fellowships, the ones I can definitely know of, a lot of the Ivy Leagues have a lot of these institutional fellowships, which are just discretionary funds that the university as a whole has available for students. I know USC also has a great package of institutional fellowships because they have a high endowment, so they have a lot of money. And then when we go down at the departmental level, so that's, so CGU, my university, when I got the fellowship, it wasn't an institutional fellowship. It was a departmental fellowship because it came specifically from the School of Educational Studies at CGU. Later on, their funding structure completely changed and all the funding is now centralized. So we've been pushing to open a fellowship at the institutional level. And that way, that allows any undocumented person to come into the university and then choose whichever program they want to go to. Whereas before, all of us who came into the program had to go through the School of Educational Studies because that's where the funding was from. In addition to that, at all the universities, each department also has their own set of funds. So this is where it's really important to do your research and then talk to the department chairs or talk to different professors at each one of the departments to understand their funding structure and how much money they have available. In addition to that, there are also privately funded fellowships. These are really great, and I really encourage all of you to take advantage of these because these just became available to undocumented students. So, so the Rhodes Fellowship actually has been available to undocumented students for many years. It is a little bit complicated being undocumented. You have to shift through different visas, but there is one student who I personally know of who did get the Rhodes Scholarship, which is the biggest one. It has funding to go to Oxford to get a graduate degree and continues to provide a lot of support to move forward with graduate school. One of the biggest ones is also the Ford Foundation just opened their fellowships to undocumented students, and that is primarily for the PhD level, but they will fully fully fund PhDs and even postgrads, or even pre-doctoral fellows. So a lot of money available at the Ford, and that just became available, I want to say, about 3 years ago. The other one that just became available about 2 years ago is the Paul and Daisy Soros. So that one will pay for either professional or graduate school at the PhD level. A lot of money available from the Paul and Daisy Soros. A good friend of mine, Denise Rojas, just got it to go to medical school. So, I mean, they have a lot of money available for both professional and graduate school level. And many more are starting to open up. And the reason they're starting to open up is because both undocumented students and allies are calling these fellowships, and are letting them know that undocumented students need to be able to get access to these funds. So if there are any that you know out there for your particular field, call them and just let them know that they need to become available to undocumented students. So really important to take a look at those. And then, of course, the last two options are something that many of you may be familiar with as you through your trajectory as an undergraduate student. So scholarships, there are many scholarships available depending on your field of study, depending on your personal characteristics. So again, all of these is just really important to just do your research and see what's out there. You know, use Google and figure out what's out there for whatever it is that you're interested in going into. And lastly, a great opportunity to also get more funds is to fundraise on your own. So I know that the GoFundMe campaign, a lot of folks have been very successful in fundraising large amounts of money through fundraising on your own. So you can get really creative with trying to get get that additional fund. And like I said, all of these in a separate presentation, I would talk about this in a lot more detail, but given the short period of time, I definitely encourage you to look through some of the other slides that that are offered in the presentation too. I have specific links and much more detailed information at each one of these in the other slides. So I'll talk a little bit about what the undocu-hustle means. So what the undocu-hustle means is that oftentimes there has been a lot of advocacy work at the undergraduate level to get undocumented students through undergraduate, but it hasn't really trickled into graduate school or professional school. What it means is that you're going to have to create your own opportunities. So again, because there aren't a lot of undocumented students at the graduate or professional level, oftentimes it's going to be you. It's going to be one of you creating these new opportunities, talking to people, and just making a case of why it's important for undocumented students to continue with higher education. It's important to build your community. Many of you may know of a lot of undocumented individuals at your undergraduate institution, but that may not be the case in graduate school and professional school. You may be the only one. So it's really important to build a community or tap into a community that already exists, for example, through social media. We do have a group of undocu-grads on Facebook, and it's been a great opportunity for a lot of folks who don't have any other classmates who are undocumented to ask questions and really just to build a community through social media. Really important to advocate for yourself and on behalf of others. So this is very much a collective effort. And really important to think about that you will have to advocate, you know, for yourself, whether it's through fellowships, whether it's through, you know, getting into specific programs, and then making sure that those opportunities continue to be available to other undocumented students. Really important to stay informed and connected. As we all know, with the new administration, lots of different changes are happening, so really important to stay informed and be aware of everything that is happening. Also important to take risks. As an undocumented student, having navigated the system for many years now, I've had to take a lot of risks, whether it's jumping on a plane with my Mexican passport, putting in a different number in the application when I probably shouldn't have, you know, lots of different things that I've had to do. Drive without a driver's license because I had to do it. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to move forward with everything I wanted to do. Of course, calculated risk, I should say that, not just going off and doing anything else, you know, doing anything, you know, that you maybe shouldn't be doing. So definitely calculated risks. And lastly, believing in yourself. Really important that You know, the imposter syndrome is real, and we all go through it, because oftentimes when we do make it into some of these programs, some of these institutions, we think like, oh my gosh, you know, how did I even get here? All these other folks are doing so many amazing things, but just really important to continue to believe in yourself, and know that your struggle, your story is valid, and we need all of you to continue to move forward with higher education. So now I'm going to switch into navigating the professional world. So with this one, I'm just going to give you a couple of slides with some tips. That the way I created these slides was just some tips that I wish that somebody would have told me as I was, when I was in college, getting ready to navigate this professional world. So some tips that you can to prepare for the professional world while you're in college. So identify your playing field. What this involves is, once you think about a major, or even if you're still considering what it is that you want to major in, well, really look into that, really explore it, really research it, and think about, well, what does the landscape look like for a particular field that you want to go into? What type of education do you need? You know, what type of experience do you need? So what do you need to work on while you're in college to be able to get a job or work in that field when you graduate? Build and enhance your skill set. This is the best opportunity to do it when you're in college, to really, and this could be definitely taking the classes and making sure that you're doing well in those, but even beyond that, you know, really think about, you know, given your particular field, what is it that you can do maybe a little bit extra? You know, maybe sign up for a course that's offered in like programming, or for example, some of the different courses I signed up for were like GIS, a lot of statistical software I learned when I was in college, which has helped me tremendously in graduate school and professional school. And it's not that it was part of my classes, I just signed up for anything that I saw that could be interested specifically related to data analysis, which is what I do now. Become a strong writer and communicator. This is probably one of the most important things that you can do to help yourself while you're in college. And this means, you know, take on additional writing courses. You know, take on maybe like a summer program on writing, with communicating. Maybe join like some speech. Maybe join is it the Toastmasters? Really get used to talking and writing as much as possible. It's so crucial to be able to become a strong writer. It doesn't matter what field you're going to go into, you really need to be a strong writer. Important to seek mentors, and this could be definitely your professors, but in addition to that, other folks that can become, you know, that can become individuals that you can reach out to later for letters of recommendation or just in general advice. Great time to do it while you're in college. Join clubs and organizations at school. Really important to build those networks, and then also to take on positions of leadership. That really does count when you're out looking for work opportunities. Professional organizations are also really great. I joined, I think, like 3 or 4 different professional organizations and lots of things. I think I joined a business one, I joined an econ one, I joined a math one. I can't remember how many I joined, but those professional organizations are a great opportunity to present if you're working on research, if you're working on a portfolio. Also a great opportunity to network, a great opportunity to also find work opportunities, because many recruiters end up showing up to these conferences of professional organizations. Also important at this time to work, intern, or volunteer, whatever it looks like. If you can't work, then you can definitely intern or find ways to work as an independent contractor, which I'll talk about. But if you can't do any of those, you can definitely volunteer at any, you know, in your desired field of work. Really important that all of these opportunities and everything that's listed on here, you can write down on your resume and talk about them. So these are just very tangible things that you can do while you're in college. And here are just a few tips that I just came up with as I was thinking about, you know, again, what would I want to hear if I was, you know, back in college? So I'll start off with know your worth. And this talks about both personal and financial. So I'll start off with financial. You definitely need to know in your field, again, important to understand the field you're going into, how much should you be getting paid? I mean, the pay gap, the gender pay gap, all these different pay gaps that exist are a real thing. And it's oftentimes because we don't know how much we're supposed to be getting paid for the type of work we're doing. In terms of the personal, know your worth as an undocumented person. Really, I oftentimes, when I talk to a lot of folks, I think that, sometimes, we can let our immigration status define us, and that's not all who we are. Yes, we need to understand that our immigration status, I mean, personally, it's led me to lots of different routes that maybe I wouldn't have done had I not been undocumented. So I think that it really has taught me to the importance of hard work, the importance of being entrepreneurial, the importance of hustling. But at the same time, that's not all who I am. So I really needed some time to explore and understand that I'm worth, with my education, some of the skills that I have, I do know my worth. So really important for you to understand and tap into, really understand what are your skills, what's your trademark that you have that makes you have the possibility for you to go and negotiate and talk about, why a person should hire you. Which leads me to the next point, which is work on your negotiation skills. So that's why it's really important to just have a clear idea of what your worth is, both personal and financial, because that will allow you to negotiate a salary, negotiate getting into getting financial aid to go to graduate school, professional school, anything. Pretty much moving forward after college, you're going to have to negotiate. So that's where you need to understand what's your worth. Important to know your rights. This one really is related to our immigration status. So whether you have DACA or not, oftentimes I've heard of a lot of cases where maybe an employer won't even look at your application because it says you have DACA, and that's actually against the law. So you really need to understand what are your rights as an undocumented person, as a DACA individual, and even beyond. So just really important to know that and be able to talk about that, and also be able to have connections to organizations that can help you if you do get caught in a situation where you're being discriminated against, whether it's for your immigration, whether it's for race, gender, etc. Important to get comfortable marketing yourself. So after you come out of college, you need to go out into this professional world. So you need to talk about what it is that you're good at. Why is it that individuals should be hiring you or working with you? So a few tips related to that. Definitely important to build a strong resume on paper and online. Use all the online sources that are available out there. Use LinkedIn. You're more than happy to stalk my LinkedIn and get some ideas. I've personally stalked lots of people to get my LinkedIn to the level where I think it should be. I also have a page through like academia.edu. So look for all these online sources, and then that makes it very easy as you're sending an email or reaching out to folks to include the link of your personal profiles. Important to learn to tell your undocumented story. Really think about some of those points as they relate to you overcoming this, stress, all the stressful part of being undocumented. Learn to tell that and learn to talk about that. Important to take risks, as I mentioned before, and really, really important to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally. Being undocumented is just, it's a heavy load on so many levels. So just really important that as you're thinking about the professional world, whether it's graduate, professional school, you're thinking about even graduating from college, to take care of yourself. I think that oftentimes gets overlooked, and it could definitely be detrimental to our health if we're not conscious and if we're not thinking about that. Important to network. I mean, that's probably the one piece of advice that if you walk away with is just network. You just never know who you're going to meet, and I think all the different opportunities I've had throughout my trajectory are because I just came across individuals like Will, like Kathy Jin, who have really opened the doors to many of these opportunities. And lastly, of course, important to hustle, and more importantly, the undocu hustle. Oh my gosh, and I'm totally running out of time. Okay. So with this one, I'm probably going to go through it very quickly, so I leave time for questions. So these are some of the ways to earn a living without work authorization. So in the case that DACA doesn't exist anymore, which I'm a DACA recipient, so this is something that definitely affects many of us. These are all the ways that you can earn a living without work authorization. So you can work for yourself as an independent contractor. You can start a sole proprietorship, a limited liability corporation. Basically, those two are businesses. And I won't go through all of this slide, but they're basically legal considerations regarding independent contractor. So with IRCA, that established the I-9 form, and then having a check for your identity and for work authorization. But however, what's exempt from that is the independent contractor. And the reason it's exempt is because these aren't opportunities for undocumented individuals in itself. They're opportunities for any foreign individual who chooses to come to do business in the U.S. Can do so through getting an I-10 and then through the W-9 form, using the W-9 form instead of the I-9 form. And then the whole premise behind this is that anytime you contract with somebody or you start a business, you don't have to talk, actually you should not talk about your immigration status at all. So it's in this like knowingly part. If somebody knowingly engages in work with you that knows that you're undocumented, that is against the law. So this is why you don't even want to mention your immigration status at all when you're pursuing these opportunities. So I'll let you read through the definition of an independent contractor just so I can move forward with them. There's basic guidelines that are established by the IRS. All of this is written in much more detail in the Life After College Guide and also in new material I'm working. And then I think I'm going to let you read through the main differences because it's really important to understand that there are differences between an employee and an independent contractor. So this is probably by far one of the most complicated things to really begin to understand, because it does require a change in mindset from what we're typically used to, which is we interview for a job, we work, 8 to 5, we, there's certain money that gets taken out of our checks. That's completely different from an independent contractor. As an independent contractor, you're your own boss and you're in charge of paying taxes. All of this information is actually talked about in much more detail in a webinar series that I run through an initiative called Immigrants Rising. So any questions that come out of this, I know this, like I completely am giving you a super general overview, but all of this is discussed in much more detail in some other work that I will share with you. Basically, quick run through of the forms that are required. The W-7 form gives you access to an I-10 if you don't have one. This is only if you don't have a social security number. You can get an I-10, and this I-10 allows you to do all these opportunities. Instead of an I-9 form as an independent contractor and as a business owner, you use a W-9, which basically just tracks your money, because at the end of the year, you need to pay your taxes using a 1099 form. Again, all of this information, taxes, including all of this, is in much more detail in a webinar series. And a contract, really important to have contracts anytime you're doing these type of opportunities. I'll let you read through the tips to starting living as an independent contractor. This chart basically gives you an overview of the different personal information that's required, the forms, the taxes, and the startup costs for any one of these opportunities, which I'll also let you read on your own. There's also, I'm such a huge proponent of entrepreneurship opportunities because it's just really such a viable way for any individual to earn a living regardless of immigration status. And in addition to that, there's what's called, these two opportunities actually lead to permanent residency, and with the DHS International Entrepreneur Rule, individuals can actually get temporary work authorization. So just important for individuals to note that these programs exist and they are avenues for work authorization or permanent residency. Lastly, I will briefly touch upon this webinar series again. So I'm more than happy to send out a link to the recordings of the webinars we've been doing and the handouts, which talk about, so the entire Immigrants Rising, which is the initiative, is to promote entrepreneurship opportunities for all immigrants, regardless of regardless of legal status. So that's a webinar series, and we're getting ready to launch a web page that will include much more information about all the entrepreneurship opportunities I briefly mentioned. And E4FC has done really amazing work. You know, in addition to the Life After College guide I discussed, they really have a lot more information that's available to undocumented individuals. Sorry, I had to rush through that, but here's my contact information, and like I said, feel free to peruse through the entire PowerPoint, and feel free to send me an email, feel free to follow me on social media and ask me any questions. I'm happy to support all of you in any way that I can. And I think we have 6 minutes for questions, so we'll go ahead and jump on that.
Yes. So you can either raise your hand now and we will unmute you, or you can also send your questions in through the question box and you can write it in. So either raise your hand and we will unmute you, or send in your questions. So while we wait for that, I just want to make sure that we say thank you for doing this presentation and inspiring us and giving us some sense of hope. And we know, I think sometimes, at least when the new administration came in, there was a lot of sense of what are we going to do? And it wasn't until I started participating in your presentations and listening to that that I thought, you know, we're going to be okay. So having this information, I think, has been really, really important, and has at least made some of my anxiety go away. So thank you. So somebody's asking, if you become an independent contractor, would you use your Social Security number that you got with your DACA?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, so the Social Security number you get through DACA, you get to keep forever. Even though it says it's not valid for work authorization, again, work authorization is completely separate from independent contractor. That's the way it was written in IRCA. So legally, it's intended to be this way. But so with your Social Security number, that's just what you would use for independent contracting, because you don't have to provide work authorization when you're doing these opportunities. And again, all this is talked about in much more detail in webinar number 1 of the series. And I'll make sure to send you the link, Abby, again, so you can send that out to all the scholars.
Great. So does this mean it is possible to get work authorization if DACA ends through owning a business?
Yes, through the EB-5 program. So sorry I didn't get a chance to talk in more detail about the EB-5 program. I mean, this is definitely like the ultimate entrepreneurship opportunity. So, you know, when I typically talk about this, I spend a lot of time talking about what it means to work as an independent contractor, how you can jump into becoming a sole proprietor, how you can build partnerships, how you can start corporations, and how you can do limited liability corporations. But at the end of all that trail, the EB-5 program is intended to be for individuals who invest $1 million in most areas, or $500,000 in high unemployment areas or rural areas, or also create 10 permanent full-time jobs for U.S. citizens. So yes, the requirements are, you know, it's not like an easy thing to just come up with $1,000 or even $500,000. But this is intended to show that if you are successful, or if maybe some of you may already have an idea that can lead to this amount of money or create jobs for U.S. citizens, that can get you a green card.
Great. So you mentioned DACA and employers denying employment to people for having DACA, and you said that that was against the law. Can you go a little bit into that?
Well, basically, there are a lot of cases with discrimination. So employers are not allowed to discriminate on the basis of immigration status, of gender, of race, etc. So it's really based on employment law that you would need to become familiar with. So again, I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot give specific detailed information, but in general, if you want to search for more information or speak to a legal organization about how you're protected as a DACA recipient, that information is out there, and it is important to understand that. And maybe there should be a webinar that like maybe NILC or ILRC can do
Yeah.
about like your legal protections, both as an undocumented and a documented individual. So I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. Maldiv actually has successfully won a couple of lawsuits, and TheDream.Us has been able to be beneficiaries of that, because from the money that the lawsuits went through, I think about $150,000, the settlement went to TheDream.Us. So scholarship money was used for that. Yeah. So
That's wonderful.
So somebody's asking, how can you market yourself as a student and independent contractor? Example, I'm an accounting student and plan to start filing taxes for others in the next year. How can I market myself if I'm still a student? And then the other question we have is, I'm planning on opening a business soon, so where would I first go to hit the 10 employee requirement?
Got it. Okay, so in terms of marketing yourself, if you take a look at the slide that says tips to starting earning a living as an independent contractor, pretty much this entire slide is intended to help you do just that, to start thinking about, whether a lot of marketing, can be done through networking, can be done through, having a business card and disseminating that at any event. It could be done online. You could use Facebook ads. So in general, if you take a look at some of these tips here, I really created this slide specifically for that as you're thinking about promoting your services, these tips have sort of a general overview of how it is that you can do that. But I'm more than happy to talk to that person on an individual level to share additional information and also connect you with folks that I know who are also doing tax preparation. And then the second question with regarding the business, so there are very specific. Let me see if I have. It's not on this slide. It's in one of the slides also that's in this presentation, talks about specifically the steps needed to start a business as a sole proprietor. So that's already in one of the slides, and there are also specific steps to start a business as a limited liability corporation or a worker cooperative. But so it's actually very easy to start your own business. You basically just go to City Hall and you pay anywhere from $35 to $50 depending on the type of business you want to do. Of course, everything varies depending on the type of business. You may need additional licensing requirements that you may have to pay for. So depending on what your business is, but in general, the city clerk is the first place to go to just start a business and formally file your business. In addition to that, you would need to get, if you do want to start hiring employees, you need to get what's called an EIN, an employer identification number, which you can get with an ITIN or with a social security number. Basically, that number becomes the number of your business and not you as an individual. So very important to understand that many of these entrepreneurship opportunities, it's no longer about you as an individual. You are now part of your business. So your business is the one that is represented. You run taxes, you run all your deductions through your business and not you as an individual. So the tax situation can get really complicated with every next level of the type of business you want to start. But in general, to start hiring employees, you do need that EIN, and then and then depending on what type of business you have, then that's how you move forward with hiring employees, and then meeting that minimum of the 10 employees. And I am going to be doing a webinar specifically on those opportunities, the EB-5. We are working with legal counsel to help us with the webinar. So that's definitely going to be part of the series. So stay tuned for that.
Great. Thank you so much. We are a little bit over time, but the information you have given us has been all well worth every second. So thank you so much for that. We will conclude now the Life After College presentation, and big claps to Iliana for all your help Um, like,
Thank you,
like,
Patty.
yeah, like she said, you can contact her. Hey, take advantage of those things. Like she said, find mentors, find people that are going to support you, find your community. She's definitely part of our community, and we're so grateful to have her. Thank you so much for participating, and we will send out a copy of the recorded presentation and any of the information, the links that Iliana mentioned, once she sends it out to every single one of you. So thank you for your attentiveness and for participating on a Saturday in this presentation.
Yes, thank you so much to all of you for asking those great questions and being joining us today.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.